anyone listening to this, just right now, zone out, try and listen to your heart, try and feel your heart beating. You can't feel it. Unless you're racing, unless you're laying in bed with your head on a pillow, you can't feel your heart beating. And it's a really bizarre sensation when you try and feel your heart beating. And it's really horrific when all you can do is feel your heartbeat. As a young man, I left school. Mountain biking was fairly new. It was 88. I rode obsessively for about 6 months, really enjoyed it. And I entered my first race at Eastway, cycle circuit in London. I won both my heats and I won the final. And I thought, I could be good at this. Continued training, continued racing, all cross country. And I found that I was winning most of the races I was entering, which was amazing. I didn't expect it. Until 92, I think it was, when I stepped across into downhill. I got third in the sports race on the Saturday, and then there was this thing called a downhill on the Sunday, and we were there anyway, so I thought I may as well race that. All the top riders were there. There was 3 runs for everyone, and I won all 3 runs, beating the current national champion on my rigid Kona bike. So I was one of the very few riders racing at the top level of British cross-country and downhill. I'd had an airbrush kicking around that I'd owned for years. I picked up the airbrush and I'd painted one of my crash helmets at the time. I painted Tigger on the back. It looks horrific, but I really, really enjoyed it. The thought process is so slow and so methodical. I found it really therapeutic. I'd had a great job as a young man. I didn't have to earn a lot, so I literally just painted a few bikes a month. It was only really the heart condition that made me focus.
I firstly met Alistair when I was 15. Funny enough, I was very young. He rode motorbikes and I wanted to have a ride on the back of one.
And her boyfriend trusted me more than he trusted himself, so he let me take her out, and that was the first meeting of a very young, stunning Rebecca. Obviously I was a lot younger then.
But didn't meet him again till about 10 years later when I moved into my home and he lived literally opposite me. I noticed that he ran and he was into Ironman, so I asked him,
where's good to run? And kind of caught my attention. The doctors think I have ARVC. I was in my bedroom, I was feeling really poorly, I'd been rushing around. I'd had a bath to try and relax myself. While I was laying there in silence, I felt my heart was racing, and I just thought, that's really not good. But the previous day, I'd done my first 10-mile time trial, as in training to see where I was, and I was sub 21 minutes. I've got no question in my mind about my heart being healthy. I'm as strong as I've ever been. I went to get into bed, and my little boy was in my bed because we'd watched a film a bit earlier on in the evening and he'd fallen asleep. I looked across at him and I just thought, he cannot wake up to a dead daddy. It's such a weird thing to say, but that's exactly what I said to myself. But if he wasn't in my bed, 100% I would have just gone to bed. I messaged Bex and we went into hospital. My stats started to drop, so my blood pressure was starting to go, oxygen level was decreasing in the blood, and so if I'd have got into bed that night at 3:30 in the morning, I would have almost definitely passed away. They did the cardioversion. I woke up feeling 100%. Okay, brilliant, we're going home. And then the doctors quickly explained to me that I wasn't going anywhere, that what I'd had was a non-life sustainable heart rhythm that could occur at any time. And things just went bad to worse. One of the mornings, the day before I was expecting the ablation, the nurses come in and said, right, we're going to be fitting you with a defib, which I knew nothing about. I freaked out, got dressed, left the hospital. I just wanted to get away. I've never taken drugs, I've never smoked, I've never been drunk. I am not letting them put a titanium box inside my chest. I took some time outside, it was a really sunny day, and there were some really quite poorly people when I was sat outside there, and I just thought, it's just a box, it's not the end of the world. And we went back into the hospital. So the morning of the operation comes, doctor comes in and says, they can't fit a subclavicle in you, we've got to fit this Boston unit or St Jude unit. Now I'm having a wire put inside my heart, a titanium device put in the muscle of my pectoral, and I've got to lay awake while they do it.
It all happened in such a short space of time, and at that time I wasn't sure he'd be coming out, because the surgeons at the time had the discussion, you know, it's heart surgery at the end of the day. You just hope that he was in a good place, and then the car broke down on the way.
She'd broken down 2 miles away and run across Southampton, using her phone for running across parks and stuff rather than following roads. She hadn't even made it there, and I'm thinking I'm going to be going down for this operation in a minute, and I'm not even going to get to see her, you know, before. So that was playing on my mind a bit. You know, I wrote a little note.
I think it's just like a bin bag that you have sellotaped to the side of your hospital bed. I think silly thing like "chill out, Winston" or something like that, with a smiley face. And somehow whenever he's in a stressful situation, he makes me feel better. It's quite a trait he's got, you know.
She made it just in time. You know, she made it with about 5-10 minutes to spare. They were running a bit late, so she got there in quite a state, but you know, at least she got there before that operation. Horrible operation, because the pain was not good. That was harsh. You know, I left that operating theatre so low. And I don't think I'm a vain person, but I just looked after myself, and I just didn't want to see this big lump sticking out of my chest, and I was ashamed of it. You know, they'd set the device up a certain way, and I'd said, look, I'm going to be out on my bike and I'm going to be training. So the last thing I needed was this device reading my heart rate and trying to look out for me when my heart's at 170, 180 beats a minute, and accidentally shocking me. But they refused to change the settings.
The first treatment Ali got from his defib was actually inappropriate. We were out with a group of friends, literally not too long after he had it fitted. So Ali and I said, we'll ride along, we'll meet you, and then we'll ride back with you.
They didn't know I had a defib fitted. It was just me and one of my mates up the climb. We dropped everyone else, and I was mindful that my device kicked in at 176. So I thought, just keep it below 176, and then the device isn't doing anything, nothing bad's going to happen.
And we were just coming up a climb called over up Waltham. It's quite a chalky, hard going climb.
And so, you know, my heart crept over 176, and I got a full-on defib shock with no notice whatsoever. And my mate has looked behind in sheer disbelief. He knows I've been in hospital, but he doesn't know what it's for. He thinks it was for a few checkups. You know, I was ashamed. And he stopped, you know, and dropped back to where I was a few meters, and I just said, Jay, I've got a defib fitted. And it's just gone off. And
Jay was just a bit taken aback, because Ali hadn't told any of our friends what he'd actually been through, so nobody was really aware of what was going on. Ali said, please don't say anything to Bex, you know, I don't want to worry her. Whatever you do, don't tell Becky. And so I waited for my heart rate to drop, and then we started carrying on riding up the climb. We slowed down, the other guys caught us up, including Becky. Becky could see something had happened. But I knew that something was going on, I knew that something bad had happened, so I rode home with him and asked him to tell me what had gone on, and he'd said that he got inappropriate treatment from his device, which was quite hard. We got home, rung the hospital extremely cross the next day. They agreed that it was in an appropriate shock. There was nothing wrong with my heart rhythm. I wasn't in a VT, so that shock shouldn't have occurred. So with my maximum natural heart rate around 192, 220 beats was fine for me, because in my mind I'd said, if my heart is at 220, I need a shock. So I still hadn't come to terms with having this in my chest. By then they'd changed the settings, and I was back out training. So it was late April the defib was fitted. And by the end of May, I'm training and then racing. Every time I went over threshold for the first 4 or 5 races, I'd get really anxious. The anxiety subsided every week, and then it was all hope for this ablation that I'd never had back in Southampton, because this ablation's going to fix me. You know, in my head I had, yes, I've got this wire in my heart, but at least you'll look normal then when you look in the mirror and what have you. 5th of August, had this operation. They did some burning on the heart wall, and they burnt in areas they shouldn't have burnt, and they caused a lot more problems. Prior to the operation, the previous 4 or 5 months, not a single episode. The next 4 or 5 months after the operation, 170 episodes.
Worst decision of my life, having that operation. I should have accepted this tin box and I should have just gone with it and said, what will be, will be. And then they scheduled me in for my second ablation mid-February, and this was with a different team because I would not let that first team anywhere near me again. They finished it, come home, was quite a lot better. I got back to riding. I did some racing that year, so I did some time trials, but what we learned quite quickly was whenever my heart would tip up over 170 beats a minute, it would get confused and I would go into my VT. But it was fine, you know, in my mind it was like, it doesn't matter, just stay in shape. When they fix this, you can come back just as strong. And you know, and the machine would grab my heart and go up. It has 4 attempts at doing a passive treatment. But this was when I started to get shocks on a fairly regular occurrence, and they were not pleasant at all. Long and short of it was, that operation didn't do the job. 8 months later, I think it was in September, I went in for my third ablation. So within a 13-month period, I will have had 3 ablations. And this was not a good ablation at all. He got me a little bit more stable, sent me on my way. We get home, and I know it wasn't a good operation. I didn't know how bad it was until 2 days later, when I'm laying on the sofa feeling really rough. I had a 3-year spell after this operation where if I was slightly dehydrated, I'd be laid on the sofa with such a bad ectopic heart rate, I couldn't function. If it was too hot, I'd be laid on the sofa. If I was too anxious, I'd be laid on the sofa. I couldn't even go for walks down the beach with Becky. And at the time of this, you haven't got a grasp on what's causing it, you know. My machine was set at a level where it wasn't picking up most of my feeling ill. The doctors in the hospital were unaware apart from my feedback, and they would say, oh, everything seems all right, you know, your machine's not letting us know. And I'd say, I think you need to lower the machine threshold, and they refused to. There were days when I went to bed and I thought, if I don't wake up tomorrow, then as far as I'm concerned, that's not such a bad thing.
Sometimes I get a bit frustrated with him because I could see him getting ill. I could often see him getting ill before he could. And you need to back off, you need to lay down, you need to chill out. And I said, work's not that important. And he'd say, work is everything to me. FatCreations is everything to me. And that hurt me at the time because I thought, oh my God. And I actually said to him, you've got more than work around you. You've got me, you've got the boys, you've got your family. But no, FatCreations came first because, you know, it was literally his all. It was everything. He put all his energy into this.
When I wake up tomorrow, I don't know if I'm going to be able to work. I don't know if I'm going to be able to function. I don't know if I'm going to end up being rushed back into hospital again. And I didn't see an end to it.
Not so long ago, in recent times, he got rushed to hospital. He was in dangerous VT rhythm. His device didn't pick it up, but his rhythm had morphed since surgery, so he was in a non-life sustainable rhythm for quite some time. His device wasn't dealing with it. I took him to the hospital.
One of the doctors come up to me and he said, how are you feeling? And he just put his hand on my thigh as he said that. And he didn't even let me answer. And he walked outside the curtain and he said to the group, he is cold from shoulder to thigh. We need to do something right now. And I felt horrific. You know, and that was, Becky was there obviously, but I've put that girl through so much.
And I was sent out of the room because they needed to paddle shock him. And at that time, Ali had spoken to me in a way that I'd never heard him speak before. He was quite tearful and apologising for everything we'd been through and stuff.
I'd never felt so poorly. And so I just needed her to know where a few things were. But telling someone that in that situation, that's bad. They need to know that before you're in that situation.
And I just thought, crap, you know, that this is serious. I think he thought his his time was up then at that time. So I think that was the hardest hospital visit.
They put me out, shocked me. Thankfully, it worked, so I wake up, feels like a millisecond, and instantly I feel 100%. When I say 100%, in my mind I feel 100%. So I had to go up to see the team at Leicester. The Glenfield Hospital is one of the leading heart hospitals in the UK. I'd have gone there the first time if I'd have known. I saw the surgeon, Pete Stafford. Long and short of it was, he could see I had quite a serious problem and it was affecting my life, severely. So I went there for the 4th ablation. It ended up being the worst of all of the ablations as far as the pain levels go and the discomfort. But within the first few minutes of the ablation, it was mind-bogglingly different.
Scariest operation by far. The chat from Dr. Stafford before that was the worst chat, and the paper Ali had signed to say, the possibility of you not coming out of this is pretty real.
When he finished the first burn and he stopped burning, and there was a split second where I'm laying there and I'm thinking, that's really strange. And then it dawned on me I couldn't feel my heart beating. And because I'd had 3 years of constantly, every second of the day and night, just feeling this heart that was beating in a manner that said, I'm fed up, I'm going to stop any minute, to not being able to feel your heart again. Initially I'm thinking, well, I'm still here. And then I looked across and I could see my heart was beating on the screen, and I just said to him straight away, I said, my God, stop now.
And when I turned up at the hospital, they had no information, so I turned up later in the day and nobody could really tell me anything because he was still in recovery.
I left that operation exhausted and really not wanting another one, with a heart that I couldn't feel beating unless I was laid in bed and I could hear it in my ear on the pillow pressure. And the 5th operation was a biggie, but it went really well. I felt really positive, to be honest. The doctors said it had gone very well. They wanted me to have an easy 12 months where I could do a bit of exercise, but they didn't want me going out on the bike and pushing myself or anything like that. And good things started to happen. I'd made myself a few e-bikes in the past, bought bolt-on motors. But where I was feeling so poorly, I didn't really have the confidence to go out and use them because there would always be a spell where I'd be ill. I'd got myself a mountain bike, e-bike, proper one, built by a manufacturer. And myself and Bex, early last summer, would go out for rides on that, and it was fantastic.
There's no way he'd have ridden a bike if it wasn't for e-bikes. He can't get his heart rate up much above 130, we don't think, without it having a little bit of a hissy fit. But since his last operation, we don't know where that point is until he rides a bit more and we see where he is.
We had a day where it was very warm. Ordinarily, 12 months earlier, I wouldn't be able to cope with the heat, let alone riding a bike in that heat. But what was nice about it was up the climbs, I could ride really comfortably, keeping my heart rate really low, and Bex would be out of breath. And I'm thinking to myself, if I can do this on a regular basis, then I can still go out on rides where Becky's training. I could still go out and train with Becky. You're kind of used to the mountain bike e-bikes and they're big brutish things, so you expect the performance. With the road e-bike, it's so refined and not as heavy as you would imagine, so you think to yourself, it's not going to go very far and it's not going to push me very hard up that hill. But when you get to the climbs, oh my God. Occasionally I'll get back from a ride and my heart rate will have maxed at 130. I never look at my heart rate when I'm out for a ride because I know I'd have anxiety issues. So the Garmin Face will be just on speed and distance. I get home, I download the data, and the hope is that the more I ride the road e-bikes, the more I can just have sessions in that ride where I creep up my heart rate, and then I can gradually learn where my new safe heart rate is. Riding was a huge part of Ali, and he's done it from when he was a young man, and he was competitive at it, and then he continued on with that into his adulthood and was competitive again, and then all of a sudden to have
something that you're passionate about taken away from you, you know. So e-bikes enabled him to be able to ride a bike again. Without them, he most certainly wouldn't be able to.
I haven't really ridden with anyone else. So it's something I'm looking forward to rather than what I've actually done. So because I'm just learning what's safe and what isn't safe, a lot of my friends ride on the road. As long as they pick a nice hilly route, that's not going to be a problem on the e-bike. And also, and I know this is going to sound really strange, but I want to be able to say that I'm still a cyclist. And sorry, that's a difficult one. Because I really haven't been a cyclist. That hurts a bit more than I thought it would. I haven't been able to say that I've been a cyclist. So to be able to say that I'm a cyclist again, that would be a big thing for me, because it's all I've ever been.
The journey along the way, you know, the scary times, you know, there's been all those operations that didn't go well, which actually made his condition worse, but then going back for more was very tough. Even though those times, FatCreations would not be what it is today without it.
We've been really, really busy here with FatCreations. Monumental changes. We've bought a new home, we've built a new workshop. None of this would have probably been possible if I didn't have a heart condition 5 years ago, because I was so content with riding my bike, earning enough to pay the bills. And then as soon as you start to feel healthy enough to, a house that is a few inches away from the property you own right now, that would have been a dream that you would have never ever thought of, you know, you could accomplish, comes up for sale. If I can buy that property, I can build a new FatCreations, we can expand.
The future of FatCreations is bright and colourful. We hope to be far more efficient now we're in here. We've got huge waiting lists, so hopefully we'll be able to bring that waiting list down, as well as have more time. If that means getting staff in the future so they can take on a bit of our workload, that would be great.
I feel quite proud sometimes, you know. Myself and Becky, we've worked really hard, and this has been a massive thorn in our side. I wasn't as famous for racing as I am for FatCreations, and so I'm happy to talk about it, you know, whereas in the early stages I'd have done anything to make sure no one knew. So I think I have accepted it. You know, if this box is here for the rest of my life, it's here for the rest of my life. Every cloud has a silver lining, and I don't know which path I'd choose if I was pinned down and someone said, would you change anything? If I live to an old man, the heart condition is the best thing that could have happened to me, because it's put us in a position where we can retire gracefully. If it causes me not to live to an old man,